Hello, everybody, and welcome to another week of Brain Balance Live. This is a show where we get together and talk with Heather Wells, who is a true professional angel in my life. And we are all honored and better for hearing the tools that she gives us each week to help us, with our families and with having healthy lives. How are you doing today, Heather?
I am doing really extremely well.
Good.
Yes. Although Beth and I, the producer, were talking before the show, and she just came back from the Riverwalk in San Antonio, so now I'm jonesing to go there. But yeah,
you're ready for a
good.
vacation. I can tell you guys that there's nobody in the world that deserves a vacation more than Heather.
And I can tell y'all that Jen is busy rehearsing at Disney for shows coming up, which is super cool. And
Yes.
thank you so much for still making this happen.
Oh my gosh. Anytime that I can make it here, I feel like this is a time where I kind of get my sanity back each week. So if you've ever joined us before, we talk a lot about things going on in our families, and we find out that they're not so uncommon among all families, right?
Yeah, and that really is powerful, because that doesn't mean that it makes one person's life easier. It doesn't change, this is what you're facing. But there is something too, like, hey, there's a tribe out there. There are people who can relate. I know that when I was struggling with things with my boys, I have amazing friends, but none of their kids were facing any similar struggles. And so there's just a level of it makes you question things in a different way, even though they were there's a difference between sympathy and empathy, and so I love this, and it's so valuable having Mama to talk to here on the show. But yes, we're talking about setting and respecting boundaries. It's not enough to set them if we don't follow through on them, and that takes a whole lot of self-confidence to do so. And we're going to talk about kids setting them for themselves, as well as respecting those of others, including their parents. And so, and what gets in the way, and what to do instead. And I mean, this relates to bullying, abuse. This is, by the way, the National Prevention Month for Child Abuse. And so, and I'm going to be putting resources on my page pretty regularly on that. But it applies to, do you have kids who have unhealthy friendships, or, you wouldn't necessarily call them a friend, or, it just, do they advocate for themselves if they're struggling in class? There's so many different ways this plays out. Yeah. But so as we go to the first slide, I want to say that 0%, this is not these are reflection questions for parents to ask themselves, because it doesn't mean, if any of these apply to you, that is no reflection on you as a parent. We talk about self-care, and so many times we are doing things for all the right reasons and self-sacrificing to a level that we lose our boundaries. So this is not blame. This is, you are empathetic, loving, attuned, dedicated. But this, having said that, is super true, super admirable. It can also teach our kids some of the things about boundaries that we don't want them to learn. So I wanted to kind of preface that before we start looking at these.
That is so fascinating to think about it that way, because you're kind of like, if you're giving them everything all the time of yourself and you're not taking time for yourself. I didn't think about that it kind of teaches them that encroaching on other people's boundaries and kind of taking all the time, that's okay.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing too, is if we don't have some of the neurodevelopmental struggles our kids do, then they might be able to see the differences. Mom loves me so much, that doesn't mean that when my friend asks me to do this thing I don't want to do, you say yes anyway. So that's the thing too, about how we can be teaching these things, because we don't, unless you just live in this space, to stop and think about how they do interpret that. That's why one of these things says, ignoring my needs and saying yes when I want to say no, because of what others might think. And this is not just about parenting, by the way. It could be someone at work asking you to switch shifts, and your child knows that you were planning on having girls' night dinner, whatever. It could be anything like that. So it's not just about parenting. And if you are doing this, I mean, yes, it makes you a super thoughtful person. But are there any underlying things, like, I need to say yes or else this friend might reject me? Does this have anything to do with messaging that you got from some experience in life, that I have to say yes? Yeah, we've done a people pleasing peer influence show, Is there anything, even if it's on a subconscious level, if you think about it, you can bring it to your conscious mind that maybe was I shamed when I asked for what I needed? Things like that. Sometimes we don't just look at yes, no on these questions, but then think about why. Why is that the case? And what is a small step I can take today to start turning that around? Do I have a hard time establishing healthy boundaries because of learned patterns? And that's what we're talking about there. But kids must know that yes means yes and no means no. Think about it. I put some things on my page specifically regarding sexual abuse of kids. It is more common than we think. And the whole yes means no and no means yes, there can be no confusion there. That's just one of many applications for this. Demonstrate inconsistency on the enforcement of house rules during stressful times. And so that is, am I inconsistent on it? And if so, understandable. None of this, I don't expect anybody to be able to say, no, 100% of the time I am consistent. There are moments in life, we all know that. But do you give in because it's just easier? It feels easier in that moment. It is going to make things much, much harder down the road. Is it just because you want to avoid uncomfortable emotions associated with that? Is it you're just exhausted? These are understandable reasons, but if that's the case, then kids learn unintentionally, well, not what we're trying to teach them, that by nagging, throwing a fit, etc., fill in the blank, that's how you get what you want. And that carries into adulthood. It also breaks trust. It can increase stress and anxiety. Even though kids are getting what they want, they don't feel the predictability they need for their greatest security and mental health. I talked to a really wonderful mama the other day who had kept telling her kids to clean the room, not happening. And then she said, okay, let's just put all your stuff in garbage bags. She wasn't going to make them throw away. They called her bluff and she had them do it because, and I applauded her for that. She was feeling guilty about that. And I said, you just built trust. They know that you mean what you say. And that also means that when you give them your word that you'll do something for them, they can count on you. It also teaches them that when I say I'm going to do something, I need to do so. You're teaching honesty, integrity, building huge trust there. Do I gauge my decision-making abilities too much on what on my friend's approval? For example, and listen, we all bounce stuff off each other, and we might have some friends who say what we need to hear, and then we have others who might give us the real deal. I have a friend who, and it's very mutual. She knows that she wants the truth, not what she wants to hear. What she wants to hear is the truth. That is, but no parent knows all of the ins and outs. You're the one who is the expert on your child, but also, oh, so-and-so thought that was a good idea, so it must be okay. They'll grow out of it. Okay, so I'm fine to sit back. So it could be about struggles. It could be about, there's also a tendency, this might be counterintuitive, that, I've talked before about when kids ask why, and the whole because I said so can be shaming, because we're saying your desire to understand the world doesn't matter. And there's time and a place for different things. But in general, we do want to provide explanations, and then they can take that lesson and apply it to other things. But at a certain point, if you keep over explaining, it comes across to the child as, my parents need my approval on the situation. And so if you're doing that with your kids, with your friends, it can also carry over to your kids. Now, the reason I kind of went backwards here is because I have a slide about this last one here on the next page, but do I teach my kids to set and honor boundaries, then ask them to violate them so that someone's feelings don't get hurt? And that one, it is really tricky. And because of that, I gave an example on the following slide that Bess will pull up. Let's say that your friends are going to a show, a party, or something like that. And all the way there, I want to be in the front row. I want to be, they know where they want to be. And then there's a friend who's saying, sit here, sit here. And the mom is saying, I know you don't want to sit here, but you don't want to hurt his feelings. So what we're unintentionally saying is your voice, your desires don't matter, even if that's not what we're trying to say. So it is very confusing to kids. We're trying to teach them about boundaries, and then you ask me to violate it. And yes, over the course of time, as they grow in their ability to, some of our kids are so black and white, and they have difficulty seeing the difference among various scenarios that are very different. but respect boundaries so they value their voice, the ability to say no when it counts. I said no, I didn't want to sit here. It didn't matter. And so I'm just supposed to say yes to things. So you still can teach them kindness. What can you say to be kind, and then sit where you want? And you might need to fill in different levels of blanks depending upon their developmental age. I mean, maybe this is somebody they just really don't want to sit by because they're an inconsistent friend. Or if that's not the case and this friend is just sitting in the back and I want to sit in the front, they could invite them, say something nice to the person and then still sit where you want. So you're still making sure on the level that you can. We can't control other people's responses. We do our part to not hurt someone's feelings, but we did not tell them to sit where they didn't want to sit. That's just an example.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love this. I think that at least our generation has been just like, we are constantly expected to be polite over being honest and like what's truly kind.
Yes. 100%. Hashtag truth. Yes, absolutely. All right, let's move on. Okay. Now, I have done an entire show on power struggle. So if you want to deep dive on that, looking that up would be really useful. I've done shows specifically on defiance. And so I'm really focusing on boundaries today, but these all tie together. So what are some of the leading causes of power struggles? We'll see those on the left. And then what are some of the unintentional consequences on the right? One cause of power struggles is when we are knowingly or unknowingly cold, judging, or have unrealistic expectations about how they are able to regulate their emotions. There are different levels of impulse control, right? And if they know that you think less of them because of how they are acting, they're upset because you're honoring that limit that you set, which is what you're supposed to be doing. We must empathize with the emotion. Because if we don't do that, kids learn that it is not okay to be upset when there are disappointments in life. You need to let them sit in that and experience that and see that I can survive this emotion. And how do I deal with when I don't get my way? I need to find a plan B. You grow problem solving, you grow flexible thinking. But if my feelings don't matter, that can lead to shame or their feelings of incompetence. Being overly permissive on the flip side of this, just yes to everything. Mama's tired, man. And often there's one parent who tends to be more permissive than the other. When we talk about consistency, which is key here, it's not just that one parent is consistent in what they do. The other parent is consistent in what they do. They have to be consistent with each other or any other caregivers who take care of the kids a lot. But I'll let you have whatever you want. They are much more likely to grow up with a sense of entitlement. I should be able to behave however I want, get whatever I want, and if I don't, it's not okay. They don't learn discipline. You have to work to get those things that you want, in terms of life. These things carry into adulthood. And the understanding of how my actions impact others. Trying to reason with kids when they're escalated. If y'all watch these shows, you already know that when they are escalated, the guard dog of the brain, the amygdala, hijacks anything you are saying. They will not be able to process it. And this also, when you're escalated, not a good idea because the delivery matters, something we always have to be teaching our kids. And we all know this, but this is not something kids naturally learn often if they have sensory processing struggles, ADHD, autism, with or without diagnoses, body awareness issues. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Sometimes auditory processing issues lead to them not understanding the difference in how they're coming across. They're actually talking really loudly because of an auditory processing challenge, but they don't care. It's not okay to disagree. I can't really process what you're saying. And you keep trying to reason with me. You don't even care what I have to say. We want to talk with our kids, not at them. Mixed messages. No means yes. Yes means no. I mean, broken trust, boundary confusion, resentment, tension. Don't know where you're coming from. I don't trust that. Interpreting upset. This is a big one. So this is a big one. When parents interpret a child's upset as disrespect or they're being spoiled. Put yourself into these shoes. What is something you really wanted that you didn't get? A job. It could be a promotion, whatever it is. everyone's feelings are valid. They serve a purpose. They teach us. They, teach them to listen to that internal voice. If we're shutting down their emotions and what they have to say, they learn to listen to the voices of others who don't always have their best interest at heart. Just because kids are upset when you tell them no and you're like, the house rule says, does not mean they are disrespecting you. They're going through that emotion. They're allowed to have that. It is no reflection on your authority. And so that can lead to disconnection and shame. Parents devaluing their needs. That goes back to what we said on the previous page. And they will think parents' needs don't matter. They don't value their needs, so why should I? Even for the kids who do have the level of awareness to realize the impact of their actions on you, but it doesn't matter. They don't show respect for that. And then by extension, I guess my needs don't matter either. I told that boy I did not want to puff at his cigarette, but I'm just supposed to go with the flow. Just do whatever people say. And imposing consequences for being upset about limits, it can be an attitude of coldness or judging, you're so unreasonable. That's labeling instead of talking about what happened. We never want to put a character label on kids, nor do we want to impose consequences because they're upset. They need to understand anytime there are consequences, naturally occurring consequences are the best. You broke the lamp, you're going to save up allowance to help pay to replace it. Like it's a naturally occurring consequence. The house rule says it's not because you're the bad guy, but it can't be because of upset. And you have to explicitly make sure they understand it is okay to be upset, angry, frustrated, disappointed. What we do with those emotions matters. It's okay to be mad at your brother. It is not okay to hit him. That's not about limits, but on any topic, y'all heard me talk about this, but they will think that limits equal punishment. And that is not the case. Structure and boundaries serve positive purposes. It is because we care about you and your safety, your well-being, your emotional growth, or lack of care or unfairness. And I also did a whole show called It's Not Fair, and why that happens. It goes so beyond what is evident on the surface. So many of these things are things that are well-intended. They do not really have the desirable outcomes. So if you keep having power struggles in your home and think nothing works, we have tried punishment, we have tried rewards, think about the interaction itself and talking with, not at your kids, never shaming the emotion, letting them be heard, and delineating those things and talking about why they matter.
Yeah.
But without over explaining and thinking if they don't calm down, I'm going to give in. That just can't happen, or else you're headed for it is going to make your life more difficult and theirs down the road. Okay, let's move on.
I have to tell you, the other day I was dinner was ready and Roger was upstairs and it was on the weekend and he had some video game time, and I was calling him to dinner from downstairs, which is something we don't typically talk to each other from other rooms because so often it sounds like yelling,
Right.
But I'm calling him, he's not coming, and then I come upstairs, I go, Roger, I've been calling you, and he goes, what? He yells at me, what? And I said, I've been calling you to dinner. It's dinner time. And he said, well, I don't like it when you call me like that. I don't like it when you yell at me like that. And I was like, well, I'm not trying to yell. I'm just trying. And then I went, so, okay, in the future, when I need you to come to dinner, and if I come upstairs and I say come to dinner and you don't come to dinner, what do you think is a fair consequence for you not coming? And he goes, that I don't get to eat dinner.
Come on, Mom.
And I was like, yeah. I guess, I mean, I miss out on family time with you, but I guess you're going to be hungry.
And you know what? That's such a perfect story. That also demonstrates what I was talking about with sensory stuff and also cognitive inflexibility, kids who have social struggles, not being able to see the difference. Like you might elevate your voice because he's upstairs, you're downstairs, and you're trying to make sure he hears you.
Right.
Right. And kids, honestly, so many of them cannot understand that was not yelling in anger or disrespect. That was so you could hear me. And
right.
They may not understand the difference when you're in the same room and they start yelling. This seems so obvious. I guarantee you a lot of kids do not know why it was okay in one scenario and not in the other.
Yeah.
That is a perfect example of that inflexibility and lack of abstract thought, just very concrete. You You yell or you don't yell, which
one is it?
Right. And not understanding the shades and degrees, just like kids often don't with their emotions. If I'm mad, I'm infuriated. The same thing happens with this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you have lost it with them in the past, and if you are, welcome to being a human being, even though we talk about remaining calm, there's going to be associations in the brain of when I hear that voice from my parent, it means this, even though that's not the case. We all have triggers. Like somebody might say something innocuous, but because it reminds us of something someone else did with an impure intent, we have a certain and then we realize I was responding to something that happened last week with somebody different.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is that's I don't like it either. I don't like it when we call to each other from other rooms for the same reason. Right. So it's so funny that I just kind of was being lazy. I really didn't want to walk up the stairs, and I broke my own house rule.
And by the way, anyone who hasn't seen shows where I talked about house rules, the reason I keep using that term, Jen just said that, is because when you establish house rules that apply to the entire family, we will, touch gently, speak kindly, whatever. You always want to use pro-social terms, what you do want to happen, not what you do not want to happen. And you intentionally point out when people do follow it, or if one of the parents doesn't, you intentionally point out, you know what, I was feeling this way and I did this, and that breaks the house rule. And and they're apologizing, they're learning from that. But the beauty of a house rule is that it does apply to everyone, and so that they don't feel singled out. And it gives you a degree of separation. Instead of being the bad guy, this is the rule of the house. And the kids had say in it, family meetings, of course, parents are in charge of how they ultimately come out, but do listen to them, and so that the more you had a conversation with them about the house rules you're establishing, there's more buy-in. But this is partially my idea. It has to be good. I mean, that's a little bit of human nature, but it's certainly with kids. Okay, so we were talking about power struggles between parent-child, and what, not even just those interactions, but what we can unintentionally model for our kids. But now let's talk about how the way we interact with them teaches them how to interact with others. It also teaches them what is and is not okay. So if they are treating you with disrespect, that is not okay. And you have to be consistent on that, or else it can impact how they allow themselves to be treated by others or how they treat others. So many times this has to do with bullying, and I decided that I need to do an entire show on bullying. There's no way, like, one side, y'all got it? Good. But this does relate to boundaries. But so many kids don't understand the difference between assertiveness and aggression. They don't know how to tell if someone really is a true friend or not, or how to have those conversations. But I wanted to give you a bit of terminology that's important, and knowing that kids have difficulty telling the differences among some of these things. What is the difference between teasing and taunting? And why was it okay that my friend and I did this and now it's not okay over here? Teasing is reciprocal. You're laughing with the person. It does not impact someone's self-esteem, doesn't hurt their feelings. It stops when it is no longer fun. There is no malice, no ill will involved. So an example could be, I actually have a friend who's like, you dip your pizza in ranch. You're so weird. And we laugh, and I'm like, you like olives on your pizza? You're so weird. And we're both, it's just like an ongoing joke. We both laugh. There is nothing ill intended about that. But then if this little boy is taunting this girl and says, you're so weird, you drop things all the time, suddenly that's very different. He's laughing at her, not helping her. It is intentionally harmful. He is putting her down. It continues to, please stop, and she's crying, upset. Weirdo. Hey, look, everybody, she dropped her books. Totally different. You can use almost the identical terminology. Context matters. Is it someone you care about or someone you don't? Does it stop? Does it not? Are both people laughing, or is it at the expense of someone else? This is such an important lesson for kids to understand, both for how they act toward others as well as how they allow themselves to be treated. And so many times, by the way, bullying is very fluid. And we never want to call a person a bully. We want to say the person doing the bullying, even if that peer is being unkind to your child, And I mean, Mama, Daddy Bear, come out. We want to protect our kids. But when we do that, we are assigning a negative character label to that person and saying people can't change. That's who they are. And then they can apply that to themselves. It impacts how they respond to the person. Very important. There is research very specifically on this topic, and how saying the person doing the bullying instead of bullier vastly decreases the bullying behavior as well as retaliation. I mean, powerful, powerful research. If any professionals are watching, Dweck, Yeager, they have research on that topic. And then talking to kids about being an upstander instead of a bystander. The number bystander means, and what a lot of people don't realize, and it's very important for kids to note this, it helps them know who their real friends are. It also helps them to know what to do in these scenarios. Bullying is not just about putting up boundaries for yourself, but standing up for what's right. If they see someone else being bullied, the bystander may just be passive in the situation, and that still empowers the bully. They may be egging them on, laughing, even if they don't think it's funny. Most of the time, the bystander feels guilty about it. They know it's wrong, but the number one reason they don't do anything is fear. I mean, there can be relief, like they know what it's like to be teased. Thank goodness it's not me in this moment. Not understanding the difference between tattling and not. That is an important conversation to have with kids. There's such a stigma. You're such a tattletale. But is somebody's welfare at stake? Talk to kids about the things that need to be shared with an adult, the teacher, the parents, or whatever, the things that do not. They need to understand that this can be online, as it's not always in person. Today's world, it can be on chat rooms, email, text, social media. And because of that, kids sometimes feel like they have no safe place to go in today's world more than ever. But being the next target, or doing the wrong thing. I don't know how to handle this correctly, so I do nothing. Talk to kids about what to do, whether they are on the receiving end or observing it. So I wanted to give just some basic concepts here. I want to do an entire bullying show, but I love this quote by Martin Luther King. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. What a great quote of the week, and talking about what does that mean to you? What does it mean to me? And talking about standing up for what's right. That also is very important, a very, very, very important conversation that can lead to branch off in a lot of different ways about how to know whether someone is a true friend or not as well. But just because they don't speak up doesn't mean they're not a true friend. It could be for one of these other reasons. But okay, let's move on. So what do we do when this is going on? We want to talk about being assertive instead of aggressive. When I am aggressive, that means all I'm thinking about are my needs. Your needs don't matter. I may stomp all over you. It comes across in the words I say. You're making me so mad. Very unkind words to tear somebody down. But all I care about is my needs. I want to feel in control. I want to up my social status. Yeah, I'm the tough guy, or girl, or whatever. Being passive is that your needs are the only thing that matters. I say yes when I mean no. I don't even value and honor my limits and my boundaries. Assertiveness is in the middle. I care about anybody involved in this interaction. And it has to do valuing and advocating for self without infringing on the rights of others. That is how you delineate aggressiveness versus assertiveness. And then, of course, you want to talk about passive if your kids do not stand up for themselves at all. Apply this also to advocacy in class. And I've got some resources that I'm going to share in a little bit. But how do you stand up for yourself without making accusations? Use I statements. We talked about on the unintentional shaming show. We never blame kids for our emotions. But if I'm saying, my perception is this, what I see, hear, think, observe, notice, what I'm experiencing, what I'm feeling, what I need instead, what I want, what I prefer. I am not saying you did anything wrong. I am sharing what is right for me and what my perspective is. And then I am also willing to listen. And it might be that what I thought I saw is not actually what happened. And you know what? That's a whole different spin on it. and then it works out. So putting it all together, I noticed that you told several of our friends that I failed my science test. And now I feel embarrassed. I prefer that you kind of keep that to yourself. I told you that in confidence. Will you please do that? I'm not saying, man, what are you doing? I can't believe you went around and told everybody. That was just rude. You're so rude. I thought you were my friend. Accusation, character attack. But this is what I know that happened, and this is how I feel. I didn't say you made me feel that way. I own my own emotions. I'm aware of what I need. This requires self-awareness. We got to always be cultivating that in our kids. But then listen, we care what they have to say also. Completely changes the game. We need to see that in parent-child interactions, friend interactions, peer, when somebody's not being kind, and so on. And is this a pattern or not? Do your kids have friends? They have a lot of interest in common. Sometimes they have so much fun, but then the other 50% of the time they end that time with that person feeling down on themselves, feeling dejected. I've done shows that we don't tell kids, we don't demand they don't have a friend, especially, at a certain age. There's certain limits you definitely put on things. But another really important conversation here is to talk about mixed feelings. It is okay that sometimes you have so much fun playing with Sarah. Y'all have a lot in common. You're both into ballet, but how does she make you feel sometimes? Fill in the blanks on the level possible. It is okay to have two very different feelings about the same person, and then teaching them to weigh the pros and cons of the relationship, evaluate their feelings, and more on the level they can come to those decisions on their own. This friend zaps me and disrespects my boundaries more than they protect them. That is so powerful. That is very confusing for kids. That can be confusing for adults.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's move on. And I wanted to give you resources. This is such a broad topic, and we try to keep these to a reasonable length of time because y'all have other things to do. Many of these, I'm going to do separate shows on just bullying, just some of these other things. But Weird, Dare, and Tough is a book series. You can get it on Amazon. It's published by Free Spirit. But it is a story of bullying told from the perspective of the person on the receiving end, the one doing the bullying, and the bystander. Same story, 3 different perspectives. It is beautiful. It is my favorite recommendation on bullying possible. You are teaching perspective, point of view, thinking about things from somebody else's stance. And as it turns out, and if you have kids who have been on the receiving end, they may not realize that there are certain things. It's not a blame game, but it's an awareness thing of, are there certain things that I'm doing that are being misinterpreted because I was impulsive? I didn't realize how loud I said that I was invading their personal space, and they took that as, there's so many different talking points. But these books not only are just fabulous in and of themselves, they have talking points and activities to really get the story into full clarity. Bullying is a pain in the brain is not a story of bullying. It is teaching what bullying it is in terms that kids will understand. It reminds me of the book I've recommended before, Your Fantastic Elastic Brain. Stretch it, shape it, so that kids know that. Let me read this. When other kids hit push our children. Yes. Well, yes.
This differs, I think, among parents too, how comfortable they are. Like, say something like that happens and the parent's not around and you're the only adult. I will parent your child a little bit.
Yeah. Well, yes, you are. Well, you can talk about your boundaries, your kids' boundaries. Hopefully you've taught them how to do that.
Yeah.
If another parent's present. So much bullying happens under the radar of parents. But yes, it is. If another parent is there, I'm going to let them take the wheel on that. But the thing that you definitely stand on right then is what your boundary is. Or if your child is if you've had these conversations and they're able developmentally to do so, you can give them the prompts they need to stand up for, to stand up for themselves. But yeah, most of the time, most bullying, according to research, happens when the parents are not present. But also, because we are adults and we have perspective, be looking for, and this is not a bully, I hate saying this, but it's just the truth. Be looking for patterns. Are there things your kids are doing unintentionally, like invading space? That's something we need to work on. It does not make the bullying okay. How are they talking? Are they turn taking? Do they have look for, jot things down? What was the scenario? What happened before it, leading up to it? How did they respond? What is the history of this interaction? So if this is a pattern, that's probably not somebody they need to be friends with. And if they're under 5, you get to make those choices. Kids cannot make their own choices on that. But if the parent is there, I mean, you're going to step in right then, because the number one thing is safety of the child, and you're going to break that up. But it's very important for parents. This is one reason I think it's very important. And usually when kids are under 5, parents do know the parents of the other children. That's not always true when they're older. But it's very important to have a conversation, I would say, once the violence is over, have a conversation that the kids cannot hear, and find out where they're coming from on that. Because if you're on very different pages about how you're going to handle that and what is and is not okay, and they're just going to, like, your child, if it's going to be a blame game, that is just probably not, that is not a friendship that needs to happen.
Yeah.
But even in that moment, if you've taught your kids the things they can do on their level, let them take the wheel on it. That is so empowering, because most bullying does not happen when parents are present. So let's see. We Say What's Okay series. This teaches young children about consent. There's a whole lot to think about with this in terms of abuse, and that goes way beyond an actual action happening. And we're talking about, I get to say there are at least 8 or 10 books in this series that are fantastic and helps kids know what is and is not okay in terms of, I ask for permission. I say what's okay with my body. There are many, many different books there. I so highly recommend. It is very easy to think this will never happen to us on abuse. And I'm past bullying now, and I'm talking about, I mean, they can go together on different levels, but the abuse prevention, I so highly recommend that. Middle School Confidential series. This is a series of books, as you might think, for middle school students. Although, depending on the developmental age of your child, you could use this for kids that are upper elementary, high school. But they have different books about confidence, really cultivating that what they call the real friends versus the other kind, and how you tell the difference, and family relationships. Stick up for yourself. This is the same book essentially, except it's written for 2 different groups of ages. So it's adjusted appropriately. And that really grows confidence in how you advocate for yourself. The next link is, it's one of the best resources. It has a plethora of resources, whether you are a teacher, a parent, things to be aware of. It's research based. What to do to prevent child abuse. What to do when it happens, who should you call, what do you do for your child? Many layers of resources there. And they have a thing called the Hot Chocolate series that is fantastic. And then, of course, we always round out with talking about the centers and hidden germs. So I added those there.
Yes, these are all amazing resources. Heather, thank you so much. We haven't met a Heather we don't like yet, have we?
Oh, thank you so much, Heather.
Yes, I love coming here each week and getting all these tips, and take a screenshot of that so that you have these resources. And of course, contact your local Brain Balance Center. I'm so jealous that you have Heather's centers near you. I'm all the way in Florida, but you lucky ducks have her close by. So these are the ways you can reach her. Are there any other things you want to mention today?
Well, I will say we do have, if you want a virtual meeting, we can do that too. We do those all the time. Yes, it is nice to be close to the center, and I want Jen next door to me. I want to be next door neighbors with her. But Dr. Brian and I will be back Thursday at 1:00. And there was something else I wanted to say, but I don't know what it was.
It has left the building.
It has left the building. But yes, you can follow me at The Hidden Churn on Instagram or Facebook. And I will also say that I put out a weekly newsletter on Saturdays. And it has research-based articles. It has activities to do with your kids. It is multi-layered. It has tons of information every single week. And if you're interested in getting on the list for that, we're not going to blow up your inbox. It's once a week. And it has like 4 or 5 different sections of information. Simply look for Jen's beautiful mug on the videos on our page, and there is a sign up button on that. If you just want to benefit from that.
Yes, like seriously, just such a huge resource here. Thank you so much for everything today, Heather.
I just thought of what I wanted to say, and I already said it, but I just want to reiterate. So many. If I talked about one thing about kids who won't take no for an answer, or defiant responses, or emotional regulation, all kinds of different layers, flexible thinking that's required for these things. I have done specific shows on many of those topics. So if you go to the video tab, you can see a deep dive on just that one piece of what we talked about today. And then there are other things that are going to be upcoming shows just about bullying, just about some of these others.
Love that. Thank you so much for all the information. As always, have a beautiful week, Heather.
You too. And everyone out there, thanks for sharing your time with us. We really appreciate it. Hope you have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.